Astro Bot Rescue Mission might just be the most disappointing game I've ever played. Not because it is a bad game, but because it's actually one of the best games I've ever played. Gameplay-wise, think Crash Bandicoot, but you're the camera person. You trot Astro along a linear platforming path from a variable distance, literally keeping your eyes out for traps, tricks, and troves of sneaky secrets. It's a great platformer in its own right, but what makes the game so spectacular is how it's designed not just around the PSVR, but the simple joys and magics inherent to VR as a platform. You know how a lot of games aimed at kids are like, "Hero needs your help to save the day!" Astro Bot Rescue Mission is probably the only game I've played where that actually feels like the case. Though you control Astro the whole time, the game postures the DualShock 4 and VR bucket you're using as tools independent of him. Utilizing power-up style gadgetry imparted directly into the controller, and the Power VR All Sight to enable the way along, it ends up feeling like you two really are working as a duo. Astro waves at you, he's relying on you, and it's so dang sweet I feel like I have a fresh cavity every time I take the bucket off. The intentional detachment from Astro and the depth perception as a result can be a bit wonky at times, and all the headbutt stuff can do one, but the game's so chill it never becomes aggravating. Level and secret design alone make it a great 3D platformer, but it's the foundational use of its tech that makes it a legendary one. That little guy being up there takes on a whole new meaning when you have to physically look up and see, ooh, little guy's really up there. It is endearing, it is inventive, it's pioneering, and it's disappointing because it's a PSVR game, meaning I'm one of like 19 other people who played it. We got Astro's Playroom packed into the PS5, but a pack-in that's like 2 hours long, it's fun, but it's more of a bonus rather than a true, proper, full-length experience. Astro's worth a lot more than a passing mention, and I'm so glad that now everyone has a chance to understand why. Astro Bot is just so delightful, dude. I could wank philosophical about the purity of form and electing a game of the year as a game which is truly a game, yada yada yada, but what it really comes down to is that there was no other game this year that made me so happy to simply be playing it. Every level radiates sheer jubilance, from the cheerful themings, snazzy jams, dozens of delightful little animation details, to all make the levels you traverse feel alive like few other platformers manage. Even when it pushes your platforming skills, it never loses its breezy, casual attitude, and brother, it'll push if you let it. The flow, the pacing, the secret density of the levels is all practically perfect, with design that incentivizes you to treat these spaces as playgrounds. Jump on stuff, look high and low, maybe look a little harder into this bizarre one-off seamlet we've thrown in. Even if you monkeying around doesn't result in a major collectible, the game's still happy to give out bonus coins like, hey, you made it up here! Variety in level structuring and what's to be done in said structures never falters, with plenty of fun power-ups and form changes that get used in increasingly clever contexts for both platforming and exploration, with every world leading up to a bombastic boss fight. And that's not where it stops. You think walking around Astro's Playroom catching all the little referential tableaus was adorable? Astro Bot takes this idea and uppercuts it to the moon, with not only dozens of the lost bots you find wearing adorable PlayStation pastiche, but following up the bosses with full-blown tribute levels. I had the biggest, dumbest grin on my face for these, and I can tell the developers did too. The music, mechanics, bountiful references, even the very design of the levels. Ape Escape's this open-ended space in which you can get all the monkeys or leave once you hit the level quota, hooray! While God of War and Uncharted are linear, with God of War ending with a big boss battle and Uncharted full of scripted set pieces. Loco Roco, well this is just Loco Roco, Year of Our Lord 2024, and they just made a new Loco Roco. And then to top it off, oh, never mind, I guess they're just giving these to anybody. The moment I realized Astro Bot was something special was the moment I realized that this was the only game in recent memory where I was finding collectibles because I wanted to find them. Not for completion stats, not for any in-game character improvement, oh yes, more health, more strength, another 1000 XP to strength, but because I simply wanted to find them. I wanted to see what character got pulled out next. I wanted to see what irreverent animation the gacha gave them. I want to see Albert Wesker flossing. Of course, I am me, a loser who can name every character here not Japanese exclusive. The guy who'll shit himself at the sight of a Peepo monkey because I've been here that long. There's a lot of characters here I picked up and thought, wow, where have you been? I'm gonna guess like 90% of players aren't gonna recognize more than like 20% of who's in this piece, and that makes me feel angry. I don't care if you're 5 and got this for Christmas. Do your freaking homework, prick! What was it that Jonathan Sony said the other day? We don't have enough IP? Yeah? Yeah, not clearly. Regardless of anything, to go from barren wasteland to running afoul of a fire code somewhere is such a simple yet effective result to make finding lost bots feel worth it. And the little animations you can unlock for them are endearing enough that recognition just makes for a nice bonus. Enjoyable for all ages ain't the same as baby game. Between the cheery colors, vague air of mischief, and non-existent chance of failure, Astro Bot's more than accommodating for the kiddywinks, while still stimulating us face shavers with creative secrets and some truly trying optional challenges. It's kinda hard to write anything glib about it. All the boxes for a good old-fashioned 3D platformer are checked and checked twice, all rendered in gorgeous fidelity that maximizes the power of the PS5 while almost boasting about how good things can look while maintaining peak performance now. I love how other PS5 games try to leverage the hardware by, ooh, can we render the prettiest sclera imaginable, the very pores of the Meanwhile, Astro Bot's over here using the tech to spawn a billion stupid things because we can. Because it's fun to kick it around. It is. It's really fun. Beyond that, though, the foible that presses me the most would be how the actionable side of the hardware doesn't enhance as well as it does in Rescue Mission. See, Rescue Mission is a great 3D platformer on its own, but what gives it that +1 is how it designs itself around the PSVR bucket and the player's use of it, in a way that not only feels organic to the experience, but integral to it. Most of the time. Playroom is less slick with it, but it still takes the then shiny and new DualSense features and turns them into demonstrative mechanics. They show a creative range of possibilities. Astro Bot borrows more than a few tricks from its runty older brother, like the adaptive vibration, or whatever we call it, and piping just about every SFX through the controller, giving you all the sounds being made by and around Astro, all the tappy steps, the skulls, the... Man, I gotta turn my speakers down a bit, I'm dying here. But in terms of actual mechanics, outside of occasionally having to blow your controller, which... I'm just gonna leave that there and move on, it just falls back on motion controls. Oh, you sly recidivist, you. Motion controls have been the gimmick push since the 7th gen, so it being the primary one here feels like 15 years out of tune. Now, motion controls are part and parcel for Astro gameplay, of course, but I think context is the real killer here. Using specialized power-ups and having a controller full of bots in VR when existence is an implication and your controller the anchor, that's immersive. But in real life, the controller on the screen is very clearly not the one I look down and see and hold in my hands, no matter how many SFX get pumped through and how hard I... Rescue Mission gave a kind of framing for who I am, the player, the loser, and now, as a more traditional setup, the gap between myself, the loser, and Astro is too tight to tickle like that. Player character synchronicity. I know, I said no philosophical word wank, but I can't help it, it's in my nature. Honestly, this isn't even really a knock against Astro Bot, which I think is objectively the better game to Rescue Mission, but I feel like I left Rescue Mission a little bit more impressed, if that makes sense. Both games leverage their platform's hardware in creative ways, but the way Astro Bot does it compared to Rescue Mission feels like it has a little less to do with the act of playing it, and more of what's going on while you're playing it. The game as a whole just feels a little bit more normal. But normal does not mean bad, no way, no how. Across any number of eyepieces you got, Team Asobi has proven themselves a force of premium platforming prowess, and Astro Bot is another slam dunk from them. Playing Astro Bot reminds me of the games that came out when I was but wee, when games felt more like, well, visions. Ideas from creative people that delighted in their ability to bring people into new fantasies, to give them a sense of wonder and adventure because that's what games do best. Astro Bot is not as mechanically intensive as Returnal. It's not as paradigmatic as Elden Ring. It's not as pretentious as Alan Wake 2. But there's a certain potency to a game that sets itself the simple goal of being just pure damn fun, and Astro Bot nails that test to the walls. I wouldn't argue it's ahead of the more institutional 3D platformers, clearly giving influence, but its shoulders are absolutely to shoulder. The way it moves, the way it grooves, the decades of passion oozing every which direction. And we're getting steady post-launch content for free? Yeah, we finally got ourselves a game on PS5, everybody! And it's one of the best games. True, I feel a little put out since I'm not the only one giving out this title, but screw it! If any game deserves the double helping, it's Astro Bot, my 2024 Game of the Year.